Hello, Sarah Sabin, executive and team coach here in the Leading in the Modern Way video interview series. And I'm really excited to have with me here today Steve Hyde, who is co-founder, otherwise known as one of the guys that started Push, the company. Steve, could you briefly introduce yourself to my listeners?
Hello, Sarah. Yeah, thanks very much for this opportunity. I'm Steve Hyde. I started Push with Ricky Solanke in 2007.
Okay, right. So I'm interested in going back in time. How did you end up co-founding Push, and what was the journey that led you there?
Yes, some of it's slightly accidental, but I kind of came out of university in 91 and I did the sort of the thing that you do when you've studied marketing or business. You want to go and work for a big company, or that was the idea at the time. And I went and worked for people like Kraft Foods and Pepsi, and then eventually Disney. And one of the things I found a few times, because these sort of companies, they run you through psychometric testing regularly. And it happened on two occasions where I mean, I had the psychometric testing quite a few times, but had on two occasions where I kind of got pulled to the side by the whoever it was who was running the tests, and basically said, are you sure you want to be in this kind of career? Because I was quite entrepreneurial in my profile. It was ENTP, or I was very entrepreneurial. I was often like kind of like challenging and doing different things and disrupting the way that we did work, did business. And it was fine at Pepsi, but it got to be a problem at some other places where perhaps my style wasn't great. And you know what? Looking back, I should have started my own business a lot earlier.
Hmm. Well, it's interesting you say that, because often what I find when I talk to people that come from the corporate background into entrepreneurship is that they built up a whole load of skills and also quite often valuable network connections that enable them to get the momentum going in business much quicker than
Mhm.
perhaps if they'd started sooner. Would you say that was the case for you?
Yeah, I mean, on reflection, the if I could go back in time, I'd have just spent 4 years at PepsiCo, where that was really the formative time for me, where actually was a very entrepreneurial environment, very driven, a lot of bright people. I was at Walker's Crisps in the 1990s, and there was a really cool group of people there. So certainly skills, yes. I didn't necessarily use the connections as much because I've moved into almost a very different zone in what I'm doing now. So I recognize that lots of other people do that, but I haven't. I literally started from scratch with Push. It was a completely new career in many respects.
Hmm. And what were some of the significant challenges that you faced in the beginning?
But quite a lot, because we started in 2007, and then of course the credit crunch hit in 2008. Probably the biggest challenge was we were in the very early days of digital advertising, and lots of marketing managers and heads of marketing and CMOs just didn't believe in digital. We'd go to big brands and we'd hear people, saying things like, oh, I don't click on those ads. I don't believe those ads work. And yet Google was already like a multi-billion-dollar company. So the first big challenge was actually just that incredulity of thinking, I can't believe these people can't see what I can see, that this is going to be massive. And all of the predictions about how big digital marketing was going to be, they're all surpassed. So, there were predictions about digital marketing overtaking, or digital advertising overtaking TV advertising by, say, 2012. And then it happened 3 years earlier. So everything's just happened a lot quicker. And we're seeing the same play out again now with AI.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because when I think of entrepreneurs and the visionary nature of them, sometimes that visionary nature is seeing what people need before they can see it for themselves. So Steve Jobs is very much an example of that. I mean, who'd have thought that everyone would need small, like small, small plastic blocks essentially in their pocket that could do everything, but he foresaw it. But you know, it makes it a lot a lot more difficult if you're ahead of the curve and you're seeing what's coming down the road before other people do. So, did you have to educate clients around the trends that you foresaw coming down the road?
Yes, we did, and that was quite for us. There was no real reward for that because in almost to get clients on board, you had to put a lot of time and effort into the education piece. So it sometimes we were doing a great job on behalf of the likes of Google, and then later on Meta and so on by educating those customers. But there was one of the things in the very early days we used to say, Sarah, was when we got an inquiry, we used to use like an acronym of four words. We used to BBUD, which was, are they a believer in digital? That was the next one. Have they got the budget? Was the next one. The U one was urgency, and then the next one was decision maker. So the urgency bit was quite important. That we found that was a key thing in getting people to actually move. A lot of people sort of kicking cans down roads and saying, "Yeah, I'll get on top of this digital marketing stuff at some point." But yeah, we have been educating people throughout, and it's like I say, it's playing. It's almost like history is repeating itself again now, but it's going to be even bigger. What we're seeing, what we're going to see in the next 5-10 years.
Yes, especially with the advance in AI, which I think the average person probably doesn't fully understand how important it will become.
It's like crying wolf, you see. You know, when you're in marketing, you're often out there saying, "Wow, this is going to be big. This is great," and you're an optimist and you're enthusiastic about something. So, like when TikTok was starting to really roll a couple of years ago, we could see the potential for it. The problem is everyone says, "Oh, here they go again. This is the next big thing," but AI really is going to be freaking huge. I mean, it's. I've heard speakers at conferences talking about it, the biggest impact on society since electricity. So it's going to be bigger in our lifetime than the impact of, say, the internet on business. It's going to be absolutely huge, and it's coming really quickly.
Yes. I mean, it's interesting that you say that it's going to be even bigger than the internet, because I remember back in the 90s that essentially people like, with the internet, that's never going to take off.
I've got a great story about that, Sarah. I'll tell you in a minute.
No, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
So when I was at Disney, I was a sales director there for their home entertainment, and I didn't fit in at Disney. I mean, it's taken me a long while to realise why I didn't fit in. But it's kind of, and you'll know some of this language. I'm at Walkers. I was a business development person, so a hunter. You know, the hunter and farmer analogy. So whereas at Disney, I was asked to farm. You know, just manage. But here's the story. So. Look, we're looking after home entertainment business, so DVDs and VHS. This is back in about 2001, 2002. And my boss at the time said to me, "Look, you're not spending enough time whining and dining these three big customers that were really big for them. And you're spending too much time on this little customer." And the three big customers were Woolworths, HMV, and WH Smith's. And the little customer that I was spending time on and really loving being with, the little company we now know as Amazon. So, that's a really good example of just how things play out.
Yes, indeed. Actually, it's slightly off topic, but I think it kind of links into what you said, about being smart enough to predict some of the trends coming down the road and to take risks based on that measured risk, I will add. But a friend of mine back in, I think it was the 90s, a banker told her, if you've got any spare cash, invest it in a company called Amazon. She had about £10,000 sitting in the bank at the time. She was like, no, why on earth would I put money into this online bookstore? If she had done that money, well, she'd be a multimillionaire today. But
Yeah.
it's, and I'm not saying, mortgage your house and put it into something that you think will be the next big thing, but also to be very open to what is potentially coming down the road and to do your research on that, which a lot of the people that I speak to, do talk about that aspect of always learning.
Absolutely.
Steve, I'm interested in your views on leadership. So, how do you define strong leadership personally, and how do you see it impacting the growth of your company?
I think throughout my career, I've been the difference between management and leadership has been something that's often bandied around and often misunderstood. I like the definition, which is around leaders being able to really thrive on chaos, and sometimes being willing to make really big changes. And I also like the analogy, and I often use it with the team. I think it's one of the ones, I can't remember who came up with the analogy, but the one that ends up with the quote "wrong jungle," which is the idea of people being in a business, the people cutting logs in a forest, and of course you've got people there cutting the logs at the bottom of the forest, and then you have the managers running around telling people whether or not they've got the right quota for logs, and if they're doing it the right way and cutting to the right length. But the leader is the one that climbs up the highest tree and calls out, "Wrong jungle, we're in the wrong jungle." And I think that skill, that mindset is it's so important, and it's something that's, I think, is really, I don't know where, I can't answer whether or not it's ingrained in you, how much you develop it as a skill. I guess there is a bit of nurturing of it. A lot of it's linked into curiosity as well. But myself and Ricky, who started Push, we are regularly, I think, playing that role where we're trying to direct the business using those leadership skills, to the extent that actually I would say, we're good leaders, but we're probably not great managers.
So I want to just draw on a few things you've said. So number one, there is a distinct difference between management and leadership. So a leader can be a great manager, and they can also not be such a great manager, and vice versa. So there is a difference in skill. In my opinion, leadership can be developed. So though that skill set can be developed, well, I would say that I'm a leadership coach.
Yeah.
But essentially, it's there has to be the willingness there, and that's where
really
what you said about curiosity is important.
Yeah. I think there's a really big link there, because I see that sometimes you talk about that almost that in exasperation that I see people through, and I've taken lots of, over the years, graduates, whether it's at Walkers or Disney, and certainly at Push, loads. I mean, it's very graduate heavy. But the thing that separates the people, the thing that always separates the ones that make it into leadership roles is curiosity. It's like, relentless learning. The people that, when they go home at night or on the train, they're not watching, Love Island on their phone. They're actually, I mean, we all do downtime now and again. We'll all watch the occasional box set, but it's the people that are constantly learning about new things. And it's not just within their realm of business. It's not just learning about how marketing is working, but they know so much more about how the world is developing and shaping. That's the missing link, I think, between, this is my opinion, of how that development of someone that is a decent manager into becoming a real leader. Uh,
Mm,
and I think sometimes I find it slightly frustrating that people don't always take that opportunity to build and grow themselves. That whether you call it the growth mindset, whatever it is. I think it's I find it a bit sad sometimes. I see people and I will say to them, and they might be, let's say they're 25 years old, and I might say, look, if I could take 10% of your salary in 30 years time, and tell you what to do, the biggest thing you can do is to keep on learning and improving yourself, exposing yourself to different environments, reading, learning, podcasts, YouTube videos, but just that curiosity that's the key, I think, to being able to develop a lot of those leadership skills.
mm. Yes, because it takes effort to develop those leadership skills. And if you are purely focused on the detail of what is your day-to-day thing, then you're not going to look outside that. Because, as you said, it's not just about learning within your realm. It's not just about learning marketing. It's about learning emotional intelligence. It's about listening to lots of different viewpoints. It's about asking questions. It's about so much more than just organizing things and getting through a to-do list and making sure that your team does as well.
Yeah.
And I also, I find that frustration that leaders have with people that don't necessarily have that growth mindset is fairly common.
Mm.
Um, I remember a session with one of my clients, and he said, "It's nothing irritates me more than people that have no sense of purpose in life."
Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's we tend to be irritated by, things that are very integral to our value system, but, aren't integral to someone else's value system. And I think that's why, from a culture perspective, within a company, you want diversity of thinking, of experience, of
Definitely.
levels of knowledge, but that alignment at a values level is important.
Hmm.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well.
So back at Pepsi, back in the 90s, one of their key performance competencies, they had all the usual standard stuff like analytical thinking and drive for results, but one of the big ones was leveraging diversity. They really believed in it. If you look at their history, um, they were very prominent in employing in promoting women into very senior leadership roles. There were top CEOs at Pepsi throughout the last few decades that have been women, from black and ethnic minorities. And they knew well ahead of time that it wasn't about lip service. It was about actual results, and the diversity of ways of thinking actually helps foster more creativity and it's just a smarter environment. So I'm a big believer in that. And if you look at our team background and our makeup, we have a very strong, diverse makeup of people in the business. So yeah, diversity is key in the way that we build ourselves and how we build out our thinking. And there's a second part to your question. Yeah, I think you mentioned there, Sarah. So
So that was the second part, was on the values level,
values,
bringing
yeah,
together diverse group of people, but people that nonetheless share the same values or similar values.
yeah. So the sort of that kind of core values at Push, and they've been around for a while. We've reviewed them and molded them slightly, but the key values that we have are the first kind of primary one. There's four, but the first is being always ahead. And you can't be always ahead if you're not being curious and understanding what's going out in the world. The second one is being fast, and that is being fast doesn't mean you do things fast. You rush around like a headless chicken. It means you make decisions fast. You have to learn, when something's not, you have to try stuff new quickly, and you have to learn if it's not working and change it and change direction. Don't like the word agile that much. It's a kind of overused cliche. Third one is open. So being very open as leaders, as individuals. You can't be fast and if you're not open, because if you're closing and you're saying, yeah, you're not ready to know that yet, you're not ready to. We've got to. That's a special project. You can't be in that. You just can't move quickly. So we are very open. We tell people about our approach to investment and what we're doing, and we've always had a very open office plan. It's hot desk system where myself, Ricky, and the other leaders will sit. If there's a seat available, we'll grab it, and we're open about what we want out of the business and what we want out of the future. And the final one is family. And the family things kind of came together because we had so many people coming from and families. I think we're working on that one because it's a bit of a cliched one, but it does play in that we have people coming from lots of different backgrounds, and sometimes, and especially pre-COVID, they needed to be looked after in a different way and felt as part of something different. So I think we'll probably work that of the four. We'll probably work on that one and change it and adapt it slightly to be a bit more community based. But yeah, those are the kind of four key values that we had, and I think they've evolved over the time. And certainly, people, when we interview, we check for those values. We don't ask people, are you fast? Are you open? We're trying to understand how they keep ahead. What are they doing? And it might be more subtle than, do you read, how do you learn more about SEO? It's much more just understanding things like, what else they do outside of work, how they're learning about things, what their opinions on, different aspects in the wider macro environment and so on.
So in terms of, the curiosity point, and I really love that word has come up. You're talking about how curiosity is essential to growth. What specific steps do you take to continue learning and growing? So you've mentioned a few things in general, but anything specific you can talk about?
But I'm in a forced time in my diary to reflect and plan. So I actually have like blocks in my diary where I'll put that in. I read still, and I regularly read new business books. Probably go through half a dozen a year at least, either reading them physically or taking audio books. If I'm walking to the train station or I'm driving the car to work, I won't have whatever Smash FM on. I'll be listening to an audio book. Or a podcast. So I'll listen to. I've always been a big fan of Tim Ferriss and his podcasts, and I do that, and I try and put myself in new environments. So last week I was on a wellness retreat, which was amazing, something very different for me. So I wouldn't have thought of doing 5 or 6 years ago, where I'm meeting different people. So yeah, it's just trying to push the boundaries out a lot, really.
And that's a fairly, well, for pretty much everyone I've spoken to, reading podcasts are a big thing. And what I have noticed is a commonality is that they do that in short bursts of time. So when they're traveling or they're walking or they're running or whatever. And I bring that up because people use the excuse, well, I don't have time. There is always time, because there's always time when you're going from A to B that you could make the time, even if it's only half an hour a day or an hour a day or 15 minutes a day. It doesn't matter. The cumulative effect of that is important. And I also love what you said about putting yourself in new environments, because the more we put ourselves outside of our comfort zone, the more likely we are to get used to that being uncomfortable, which helps us grow.
Yeah, totally.
So final question, Steve, if you could go back in time and give one piece of advice to your 20-year-old self, what would that be?
I thought about this question a few times before, and sometimes I was thinking, I'm not quite sure, but I do know the answer. The answer would be to challenge authority, to not accept things as they are. Because I came out of university with my, really eager and keen with my degree in marketing, thinking that I'm going to go into these big companies and they're going to know everything about marketing. They're going to be doing it generally right, or 89% right. And they weren't. They were making so many basic mistakes. So it would be to challenge kind of what's seen as being, the best way of doing things, and to be a real challenger from early on.
Challenge the status quo.
Absolutely.
I think that's a really good note to end on. So thank you, Steve, for this conversation today. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for the time.
So to my listeners, I hope you've enjoyed this conversation as well. If you would like to take part in the Leading in the Modern Way interview series, please do reach out to me. Bye for now.